And we are live. Hi there, everyone. Welcome to the Aura Report. Today, I have Dinna Reshef, who is an international humanitarian who does outreaches for peace initiatives and looks for people around the globe who can speak to the current situation and have a dialogue with each other. Dinna wanted to interview me about a few questions that people have. This interview is going to be with bearing in mind there are people who are coming from a multilingual background. So we have to keep sentences short and understandable and not use too much jargon. And we also have to bear in mind that not everybody may be familiar with what I am talking about. Dinna, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mario, for accepting my invitation. I actually, as you said, I am a humanitarian international, and I'm seeing your posts and I'm reading your articles, and I'm very worried. And I'm asking myself, how come you were ignored, although you predicted everything that is actually going on? So this is my first question to you.
Mm-hmm. Let me just tell you how I predicted the war in Israel and Lebanon. I was looking at the history of war and conflict, and the thing that I realized was war is the default state on this planet, not peace. Peace is the exception. So I started to focus my research on if war is the norm, then where can we expect the next conflicts to break out? And I was looking at Israel and Lebanon in 2022 for very specific reasons that go back to a power struggle largely between Russia and the Anglo-American empire, if you want to put it in that term.
Mm-hmm.
To the second question, why did people ignore me? Well, because what I said sounded absurd in the way that people have started to think. So we have a lot of people living in bubbles, in very isolated bubbles. And this is a result of social media. You'll be on Instagram, I'll be on Facebook, somebody else will be on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And then they will follow their favorite personality, and their favorite personality will begin to drive the narrative, and everybody will get behind them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I made a conscious effort for years not to be in that bubble and to cross-reference a lot of information.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did this, it seemed to me very obvious that the conflict in Ukraine was going to lead to more conflicts. Israel, Lebanon being on that same I won't say trajectory, on that path.
Mm-hmm.
Why people didn't listen to me? Well, because it sounded bonkers. It sounded nuts. In
Although
2020,
you came with facts, with your research.
correct. I think we have to make peace with the fact that we are not dealing with a logical society or a logical way of seeing things. So when you introduce logic, it is almost a repellent to people who are very ideologically controlled and manipulated.
I understand. So would you like to add something about this subject?
No,
Because
I think let us continue, and you stop me where I'm not clear.
okay. I wanted to ask you, Actually, who is really behind the war?
Well, I think let's go to what happened on October 7th. Let us make that our starting point, because there is a lot of conversation about October 7th, and a lot of it is very uneducated. Sorry, my connection is not very stable, so if it stutters a bit, bear with me. When I heard about October 7th the first time was in a Facebook post. A friend of mine posted that his daughter had just escaped terrorists at the Nova party. And that was and immediately my head went to what I was saying in 2022 and thinking, is this the beginning of this war? And with a very sinking feeling, with a very heavy heart. And then as the day went on, more and more information came through. Now, obviously, this was a cataclysmic, a massive, a big information failure on the part of the Israelis. And the question is, was this intentionally allowed to happen? Because Israel, the IDF, are known for their high-tech, very Mossad intelligence gathering. How did they not see October 7th coming? Mm-hmm. And this is a very important question, because there were indicators far in advance. I will tell you, one of the main indicators I personally used was I noticed the level of anti-Semitism, very biased anti-Semitic speech, starting to escalate from around the end of 2021. And I started to keep notes, because there are no accidents. This was not happening accidentally in isolation. And I put it to you that the planning for October 7th started long before October 7th. And it also started by warming up the Western public to be anti-Israel and anti-Semitic. And so it is quite impossible that this level of anti-Semitism and racism was allowed on Instagram, Facebook, wherever you looked. People could say whatever they want, the most despicable things that you could not say if you were talking about another ethnic group. You would not be allowed to say it. But it passed because they were speaking about Jewish people. And so there was a level of anti-Semitism was normalized and institutionalized via social media. My hypothesis, my theory, is that this was all very deliberately set up. And I'm looking at Iran and Qatar and the whole situation with Iran and the Arabian Peninsula. And here I just wish to draw your attention to the fact that Iran is not on the Arab Peninsula. Iran is over the Straits of Hormuz on the other side. Yet Iran is dictating policy in Israel, which should really be dictated by Jordan, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates. This is their territory. So Iran is actually, while people claim it is the opposite of a colonialist, imperialist, it is behaving in a very colonialist, imperialist, oppressive manner. It is meddling in a region where it has no business. Iran did not only do this on the Arabian Peninsula. Iran has been exporting terrorism for a long time. So in Africa, the level of jihad has been climbing sharply.
Okay.
October the 7th happens all the time in Africa. But back to Israel, why didn't they notice? Well, I listened to quite a few intelligence people, and I did quite a bit of research. And my last guest, Ian Thornton Trump, actually put it in a very good way. He said,
Sorry, Mariora, sorry. You just mentioned the name, which I think, if I'm not wrong, I'm also reading. Could you repeat the name you just mentioned?
Sure. My last interview was with somebody called Ian.
Yes.
Okay, and his surname is Thornton Trump.
And he has
And
no family. He's not a relative of
no, no,
Mr.
no, I don't. No, he's from
I was
Canada, actually.
okay because I did send some articles and I was asked
Yeah.
immediately.
No, he's actually originally from Canada and working in London, and he has a military intelligence background. And I found speaking to people with a military intelligence background is very helpful. So what he said was he looked at the situation, and the IDF leadership was thinking that the threat was going to come from the north. They dismissed Hamas. They did not believe that Hamas was capable of such a large-scale invasion. Therefore, people who were saying Hamas is, gathering, something is very ominous is happening, were just shut down. In addition, I've listened to Israeli special forces speaking, and they said, well, the problem was that in under a minute or 2 minutes, they had removed all the sensors from the border fence. So the Israelis were blind as to what was happening on the ground. And when you actually go back and you look at the footage, you realize this was not a small uprising of a few civilians. This was a precision strike by a very well-trained military. Word is that they were trained in Iran. They finished their training in Iran. They were very motivated. They were told, the civilians were also told that they would be and here's a word you might not be familiar with, bounty on the heads of hostages. What this means is if they took hostages, they would receive a monetary payment. They would receive a reward for taking hostages.
Yeah.
So we had at least 3,000 people pouring in on a Jewish holiday when all the cell phones were usually off, nobody was in contact. And they headed for these sleepy kibbutzim where there wasn't a lot of action. They had plans of what these kibbutzes looked like.
Yes, yes.
They were using the people who had been working there, had been.
Yes. Yes, that is known. The question is how if I'm not wrong, at one of our meetings you did mention that you believe it took at least 10 years to organize it. If I'm not wrong.
Correct. No, you're not wrong. When the first time I heard about paying off, and just for our viewers, there has been an enormous amount of money running into the billions of dollars that has been coming from Qatar mainly, and has been paid to universities in the United States, not any universities, the most influential universities, that has been paid to Oxbridge, that's Oxford and Cambridge, the most influential universities in the United Kingdom. There is media that has been paid, and these payments trace back at least a decade. And so if you take this as a long-term plan and you look at a university like Harvard or Columbia in the United States and the protests, look at what the protests look like. They all have the same tents. They all have the same placards. They all have the same chants. This cannot be a spontaneous grassroots movement, because if it were a spontaneous grassroots movement, you would not see they are using the same equipment. They have got exactly the same type of PR. Everything is the same. So that indicates a very high level of coordination. And so I think Israeli intelligence was not paying attention. I think Ian is right. They were expecting the threat from Hezbollah, not from Hamas. They were also very divided. Israeli society was at loggerheads for the past few years, just completely turned inside and not looking at what is happening in the bigger world.
Mm. Would
Any
you like to add
questions?
anything to that, or may I ask a question?
Please go ahead.
I know that families and friends of the hostages are watching us also. And we will return to the other, to just with what we just spoke about, but I don't want those families and friends to think that that I do not and we do not think about them and want to talk about them. In your opinion, where are they? Who is looking for them? What do we know? Has there been any international organization that managed to go and see if anyone is alive? How do you think it will end? Will it?
Regarding the hostages, and let me just say to the families who are suffering, my heart, my prayers, everything I do goes out to you. I cannot imagine anything more dreadful. When the 6 were murdered, literally slaughtered in the tunnels recently, after what appears to have been a possible rescue attempt, they got word and Hamas then executed them. My heart was absolutely, I can't even explain the weight. I'm going to refer to Other Barak. Other Barak is a YouTube channel. He is an Israeli, but from America.
Mm-hmm.
And he speaks to various people, including myself, and it discusses what happened on October 7th, what the situation is. And when I asked him about this, he said the hostages were the key point to this attack. And he actually used the word, they have created a beautiful system that cannot fail because it is always Israel's fault. That they took the hostages was Israel's fault. That they cannot get the hostages back, well, they say, we want a ceasefire. And what he said about ceasefire is, he said, I guarantee you, if we call a ceasefire, somewhere there will be a sabotage. Somebody will misfire a rocket, like in the beginning, Al-Shifa Hospital was reported widely that Israel had bombed the hospital. That was not true. I knew it wasn't true. I was actually watching real-time notifications, and I was absolutely stunned to see major news sources like CNN, Sky, BBC, all reporting that Israel had bombed Shifa Hospital when what had happened was one of the Hamas rockets had misfired and landed on the hospital. So it was an internal.
Yes, that is known also, but I wanted to, if possible, that you will explain. I mean, from what I understood from you is that once they arrived to Gaza, actually they were split. I'm talking about the hostages, of course,
The
because
hostages.
yes.
Yes, let us talk about the hostages. The hostages were not taken in a seamless operation by Hamas itself.
Mm-hmm.
The hostages, many of them were taken by civilians who had heard there was a reward and they saw money.
Yes.
The more you pick up, the more you are going to get a financial reward. So we have about 3,000, and some estimates go up to 6,000 people pouring in. They are grabbing hostages. They are pushing them onto pickup trucks in the back of motorbikes and so on. There is no central control. These are opportunistic people looking out for themselves.
How many groups? Sorry, Mario, how many groups were there in Gaza
Well,
that they were split actually between, how many did you say?
there are up to 14 different rival factions in Gaza. People think it's just Hamas, but it's not. It's Hamas, it's Palestinian Liberation Front something, it's Islamic Jihad, and then all the civilians who were incentivized, who were promised money, a reward. If you take a hostage, we'll give you a reward. Now, I want to make something very clear. Taking hostages is a war crime. And it is astonishing to me that no one is focusing on the fact that taking hostages is a war crime. Civilian hostages, absolute no no.
Yes, but
So,
then, sorry, I just wanted to say that there are also, it happens also, as you said at the beginning, in other countries, in Africa, and not only.
well, not the hostages so much, more the jihad element, which is they will attack a village. And I'm talking about groups like Boko Haram. And just for your listeners, for clarity, when I said this war was coming to Israel, I also said after October 7th, I said, watch, there is going to be an increase in jihad activity in Africa. And sure enough, my words were not cold. Before Boko Haram and affiliated groups, again, it's not just one group, Boko Haram is the main group that everyone knows, they started killing in sympathy. They openly stated this. People can go and look in the Nigerian news and so on, in sympathy with Hamas. So, what was provoked was a whole religious fervor and dimension that nobody is taking into account. But back to the hostages again. So, it's not just Hamas, it's not just Islamic Jihad, it's also private civilians looking to make money from hostages. So there is no central control. I don't think there is anyone left in Hamas who would know exactly where all the hostages are and would have control over them. Some of them, like the Bibas family, were apparently, and remember, we're always referring to second and third and fourth hand information, were apparently sold to
Sold
other terrorist groups. Sold.
to other terrorists.
Correct. So when you try to make a deal with Hamas, then you have to consider the hostages. They can't make a deal about the hostages. They don't even know where all the hostages are. It's very likely many hostages right now are surrounding Ihya Sinwar. I would think he has himself very well surrounded. That is what the rumor is. The only real solution I see is perhaps offering Sinwar some sort of a safe passage to a safe country like Qatar. Maybe he can go to Doha like his friend Marshall and Hania, before he was assassinated, used to live in. And in exchange for his safe passage, he can release some of the hostages. But what people really need to understand is that the hostages were never taken as one organization central planning. So you've got that problem. There are people profiting, and they are even selling them, and which is, I can't dwell on it because the horror is so great.
Yeah.
Is that clear?
It's very sad to hear it. And I don't know what the family and the friends, or if they heard it before actually, because I heard it only from you, but not on the media, not on the Israeli media. Maybe I missed it, but I never heard this kind of explanation in Hebrew.
I am very concerned that the media has failed entirely in its
Mm.
duty to inform and to inform fairly and honestly. I see uh, signs of meddling, as with the universities who are also pro Hamas. There is definitely there is what is the word? I'm looking for a simple word to say very one-sided reporting. So Reuters is the one of the premier sources of news. I particularly went to look at what Reuters reported on October 7th. Here
Mariora,
is what they
sorry.
Mhm.
No, no, please continue.
Reuters reported not about the hostages, not about anything else. 1 year after October 7th, they reported, look at poor Gaza, look how they have suffered. There was not one word about the hostages. There was not one word about the victims. This is staggering.
Now, if
It's
you were,
mind blowing.
yes, definitely, and if you were today a leader of Israel, and the families, they want their beloved ones back, and you said maybe Israel can offer Sinwar, but probably most of the society in Israel will be against it.
Mhm.
Um, so what solution are you actually, if at all, giving the families? That is one question I have for you. And also, if you could tell us, please, about the elections in the USA. I don't know why, but lately I'm feeling that something different is happening between Israel and the USA. I can't put my finger on it, but it's there. You see what I mean?
Mhm. Let me start with the elections. The problem with the USA is they have elections every 4 years. And every 4 years, the entire world is thrown into some sort of a catastrophe to accommodate whoever wants to come into power. So we have a situation now where Joe Biden is fighting for the Democratic Party to maintain the presidency. And then we have Trump, who is singularly unpopular with many people, who is the opposition. What I am seeing is Biden gave Israel very specific instructions not to strike at Iranian oil or nuclear facilities. Now, this is actually incomprehensible. This is really incomprehensible because Iran is supposed to be an enemy of the USA. Why would the USA not say to Israel, yeah, do whatever you have to do? That way it's not our problem. And we can get rid of this threat that we all say Iran is. Instead, if you look at their actions, it almost appears as though the Biden government is protecting Iran. Why would you be so determined that Israel not do anything? Well, I will give you some realistic reasons why they would do this in addition to everything else. Just before elections, what you cannot afford is for the price of oil to go skyrocketing up. If they strike Iran, the price of oil is going to go skyrocketing up. It's a bad look for the Democratic Party. So they don't want it for that reason. Also, the optics, the PR, the public relations, the image. I'm trying to think of simple words here. The image of going into sort of a full-fledged war with Iran, not a good look because the American people already have Ukraine fatigue. So they're tired of the war in Ukraine. and now it's like another war, and we're involved in that. So there are reasons with elections, and they place these reasons. The hostages do not even factor into the equation. The safety of Israelis and the right of Israel to exist does not even factor in. All they care about is the next election, winning it, to be specific, and not having any scandals.
And not having any scandal. And well, I can share with you that an Egyptian friend said to me that Israel is only a player for America. He said, America doesn't care about you at all. You're just a player for them. You're fighting for them. That's it.
Well, I don't even think that is accurate. I think that is a perception, that is a viewpoint rather. I'm trying to moderate my words. That is a viewpoint which is encouraged. And if you repeat the thing about propaganda, and let me just take a step back. This war, the main war, was engineered to be fought on the eighth front, which is social media. So before October 7 happened, already the plan was to use any response by Israel in the social media and media wars. So a rocket is fired into Israel, it kills somebody. The Israeli forces do what any other military would do, which is they track the coordinates. Where did this rocket come from? And they fire back, counter fire. This is normal military practice. When Israel does it, all that will be reported will be, oh, they struck a school, they struck a hospital. There will be no mention that there was a provocation before the time. So the entire setup, it's actually truly malevolent. It was set up. And if you go back and you look at what Haniya and people like that were saying to their own people, because they say one thing in English and then they say something else in Arabic to their own people. He said, we need the blood of women and children. We need it for our cause. And then you say, well, what cause is this? Because we see in America, we have sort of left of center politics are very closely allied with Hamas and Hezbollah. And here I would ask you, is it not peculiar to you that godless people, atheists on the left, would ally with people who are actually fighting to create a religious caliphate, who have laws that prevent women from walking around without, lots of hijab and things like that, who take gay people to the top of buildings and throw them off. So we have an absolutely bizarre situation where it's incomprehensible, where you see LGBTQ for Palestine. LGBTQ would not last a day if they went to Palestine, but in New York and London and wherever, there they are holding up these banners, and there is no understanding of the extreme. It's two opposite ways of thinking.
I think that yesterday I was negotiating with someone on the comments on LinkedIn. It was about those demonstrations, and I don't understand why there is no flag of an anti-terror. I mean, you can be Palestinians, but you don't have to support. You cannot support Hamas, and you see, it's like You can't. So I'm asking myself, why don't they have a flag, actually, or anyone that is against the terror that
Because these demonstrations, it's an alliance of two evils. The one group, I think you may have drawn my attention to this post, where we saw that in Western countries, the youth, the pro-Hamas youth, are saying we are going to destroy the Western imperialism. We are going to destroy the West.
yes.
Okay, and well, they say that, and they also will be the people who are tending to be atheists. And then on the other side, we have Hamas hand in hand and Hezbollah hand in hand with these same people. And they, of course, believe in a theocracy. They believe in Sharia law. They believe in total religious religion should be in politics, in the courts, in everyday life. So
Yes.
this is incomprehensible. The level of disconnect involved, that these people would make an alliance. It speaks to a lot of propaganda. Many people not really understanding what they're doing. In fact, in my research, you will find I had a clip somewhere where they interviewed a protester, and he had a poster for Intifada. Now, if anybody doesn't know what Intifada means, it means you strap on explosives and you turn yourself into a weapon that will explode and kill civilians, and you know that you are also going to die, but you don't care because you have been promised, you have been told, it has been drilled into your head since you were a little child, that to die as a shaheed, as a martyr, is your highest calling. So you are looking forward to the event. Israel is not looking. But anyway, we have somebody in the United Kingdom. He's obviously educated. He's well dressed. He's not, debilitated in any form. And they go to him and they say, "Why? What is an intifada?" And his response is, "I don't know. I just picked up the poster." Okay, so we have people holding up signs and they don't know what they are saying. This speaks to a catastrophic failure in education in the West. And I'm looking at the West particularly because if we look at the list of countries where all these protests are happening, well, it's Australia, it's the United Kingdom, it's the United States. These types of protests are not permitted, not even not in Pakistan, not in Saudi Arabia. Nowhere do they permit this kind of inflammatory behavior. And then we have to ask ourselves, well, I mean, how much money can you pay them to be so detached, so distant from reality, that you can actually go to a protest and pick up the sign that says Intifada, and they love this word. They're like global. They believe it's some type of a revolution that they are fomenting against, the ruling elite. No,
Yeah.
it's not. It's a religious war.
Yeah. Yeah, you did. We did speak this morning also. I'm just making a summary because everything is so interesting. So excuse me. I wanted to ask you about France, about what's going on there. If you could share with us.
Yes, certainly. So Macron, who is the leader, Emmanuel Macron of France, has now come down on Israel quite hard, and I believe he has banned them from some sort of a weapons event or something in that line. Let me explain the position of Macron. He got the least votes in the last election. He had something like 13 or 15% of the vote. Yet he is still the president because he has a coalition government. And who did he form it with? Not the opposition that got many more votes than him, Marine Le Pen. He formed it with the most extreme fringe nutter groups. So this is what happens. They don't have enough votes to stay in power. So they go and they ally with all the extremist, insane radicals that they can find. So he is not really a duly elected president. That's number one. Number two, Monsieur Macron has got very many Muslim citizens. As a result of France colonizing North Africa, there are many from Morocco, Tunisia, and so on that are in France. And if he is unpopular with traditional French voters, well, then perhaps he is looking to cement his place as the president unchallenged with the support of Muslim groups. And this is not to criticize Muslim groups or Islam or anything like that. I'm talking about purely ruthless strategy that people will use to stay in power.
I see. Maybe you should be his advisor. Things will look different.
I don't think I would last 1 minute as his advisor, because everything I say is exactly what in fact people don't want to hear. I know I come with a very unpopular opinion. I wouldn't even describe it as an opinion because I do immense research. It's unpopular. It's not how people have been trained to see events. There has come a fog on, I would say, the entire planet, where reality and truth are very much separated from what people, well, it's a case of feelings. There is an American thinker, his name was Thomas Sowell, and he said, it's not that Johnny can't read. It's not that Johnny can't think. It's that Johnny has substituted feeling for thinking. So Intifada makes them feel good. There has been no analysis, is this in fact a good idea, or what does this mean?
Yeah, look, I'm personally not against one Middle East, and I'm not the only one. My friends from some countries in the Middle East are sure that this is a very good idea. And I do think that people should start and fight, not necessarily Hamas. If it is any organization of terror, then there should be, if there isn't one yet, there should be a flag, there should be a union of people that are fighting the terror wherever it is in the world. That can make a change, in my opinion. I must ask you a question. I don't know how long we have, but I must ask you a question. If you were today the Prime Minister of Israel, forget about who is now the Prime Minister of Israel. Let's just imagine, just switch the thought and think together. You are the Prime Minister. This is the situation. What is your tactic? What is your strategy? If you could share a little bit, I know you cannot share everything, but what you can, if you could, don't forget that the Israeli society itself, and I have been told by experts here in the Netherlands that the biggest risk is what happens in Israel, within the citizens, and the situation is more risky than what happens outside. But that's what I hear here in the Netherlands.
Again, I'm going to refer back to this was also raised with other Barak and his guest, who's also a very good speaker. The first thing, and I think this is where the Israeli government has failed entirely. If Israelis do not know that there is not only Hamas in Gaza, if they do not know that civilians took hostages, and we perhaps have no idea, and neither does the leadership of Hamas, where those hostages went, if all of these things have not been made clear, then there has been a catastrophic failure to communicate reality. And so the government is very responsible. What would I do? The first thing I would do would be to start educating people as much as possible, explaining to them the risks, explaining to them what happened. And it is now very difficult because I can see people have become set in their ways and their beliefs. And so there's an example which we have discussed, where I know Israelis who think if you just have a ceasefire, then we will be able to get the hostages back. At which point my argument was, well, no, because first of all, there was a ceasefire on 6th October. There was a ceasefire on 8, 9, 10. There was a ceasefire for almost 3 weeks before the Israelis went in, and the hostages were not returned.
No,
we are now.
If I may, I'm quite sure that concerning the hostages, you will have some family members and Israelis in general that might want to contact you. Can they in person or as a group? I'm asking myself because I have a feeling that you can provide the people that care about the hostages a lot of information. And yes.
Let me answer you in this way, and this is not normally how I would present my geopolitical research. For me personally, my grandfather was a Jew in Nazi Germany. And so I take the situation with anti-Semitism and the rhetoric and how the hostages have been neglected in Western media. I take it very personally. So this is not, I'm not paid to say what I do. I am not even popular. I am actually very unpopular for what I say. So yes, I am at the disposal of anybody who thinks I can explain anything or say anything that may be of use. Bearing in mind, of course, I am not the fountain of all knowledge, and things are changing all the time. But yes, I have a position on this, and this is a moral position. And that is, everything has to be done to end the situation.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I am at the disposal.
Shall we continue, or would you like us to wrap the meeting?
I think let's wrap it up, but let me just stop with who is behind, because what these are proxy wars, PROXY, proxy. So we have Israel is standing in for America. And America is not supporting Israel. They are allowing the situation to continue, much as they have done with Ukraine. If you look at Ukraine, the United States assisted very much to get that war going. Mm-hmm. And then when Ukraine started to fight, they started to hold back weapons. They're doing exactly this. Biden has put an arms embargo on Israel again. This at a time where Israel is under daily missile and rocket attack. There is something very peculiar, and no one should try to make sense out of nonsense. What we should be aware of is there is something peculiar with the entire setup. On the other side, please remember that Iran, Russia, China are a power axis grappling for power with the West. So there is a massive control of really the world and resources that is behind all of this. Israel is really just stuck in the middle.
So if you were the prime minister, you would have 3 points.
3 points.
I know your reply, but I want to hear it from you.
It's very difficult. I think the main point I would make is you need clarity with the families of the hostages. You need clarity about who you can negotiate with, where are they really, who is really controlling the hostage situation. And then you also need a very serious education program, because I look at Iran and it's just, this is a clown world situation. Iran goes to the UN and they say, we just want peace. We are so peaceful. We are a peace-loving country. And in the same breath, Iran launches, it's now close to 500 ballistic missiles on Israel. This is das kann nicht sein in German. This cannot be. You cannot be for peace and firing. And just to be clear, ballistic missiles, this is a very serious threat. Israel is extraordinarily lucky that there have not been many more severe casualties. And I say that knowing that there have been a number of very serious casualties in the last few days. So somebody has to kind of bring reality into the equation, where you say, why would they say this and at the same time do that? What happens is everything is just left in a very hazy situation. Oh, so you'll have them going, oh, we want peace. And I will have friends of mine in geopolitics groups saying, oh, Israel is so awful. Look at them. They're just bombing. Now it's poor Lebanon is the victim. There will not be one acknowledgement of the rockets and missiles that have been fired into Israel from Lebanon. Moral clarity and reality are the first order of business. If I were the leader of Israel, the first thing I would be doing is getting as many people together as possible to explain, look, we are dealing with very peculiar messages coming from everyone. And Israeli public should not be sidetracked, because it's very difficult once you have gotten yourself into the idea that a ceasefire will ensure that the victims return home, and that is your only option, and you are desperate for these hostages who are living in horrendous conditions, then you kind of hold on to a ceasefire like it's your only option. But when you understand that, oh no, a ceasefire can't return the hostages for very logical and practical reasons. And again, I would suggest, I've racked my head on this, I would think that offering Sinwar some sort of a safe passage. And I'm no expert in this, but that is what I'm thinking is possibly the only way.
But I understand, yes. Thank you for your reply. It's very interesting. The question is the number of Hamas and other terrorists. Israel will never demolish Hamas. It's impossible. They're all over the world. They will come. They will come to the Netherlands after that.
If I may, in World War II, Nazism was very popular. People say you cannot cure an ideology. I beg to differ. I think you can. And here, you can go and look on my channel. I have got interviews with somebody who was in counterterrorism. He's the author of a book called Deconstructing Social Justice, which looks into how crazy the Western mind has gone in terms of all of these race and identity, gender identity, and so on, how they've just completely lost all touch with reality. So, what happened to Germany was that the Allies mounted a very ruthless response. So, we had the truly hellish bombing of Dresden and Cologne, and then we had Nuremberg, and now Nazi Germany has been transformed into a decent society. So I don't accept that you cannot change an ideology. What I was just reading before I came on with you was very interesting about the Hezbollah. Apparently, most of them ran away. Now, there are ideologues for sure that are hanging in there and want to martyr themselves, but the majority of them ran away when the IDF came. They are simply payroll, and it's very important, especially in Israel, that you understand, everyone understands this. Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis are all Iranian proxy groups. Iranian proxy. Somebody is paying the money. So then we can start to make deductions, because these weapons are not cheap. They've got very expensive weapons. So if we can cut the taps to the money, then perhaps the Houthis, Hamas, and Hezbollah will not be quite so relentless as they are. If they don't have the finances, and nobody's paying them, and nobody's providing them with weapons. And here I must just very quickly point out something about the Philadelphia corridor, because a lot of people say, "Oh, please, get out of the Philadelphia." Why didn't the IDF leave the Philadelphia corridor? Because they discovered arms were being trafficked from Israel through tunnels into Gaza. So they had no sooner cleaned out one stash when the next cache of weapons arrived. So if they do not sit there and close all those, there are simply going to be, that, as you say, there's going to be another terrorist, and there's going to be another weapon, and it's going to cross the border. Very important to cut the taps of the supply chain that is funding these terrorists. Terrorist groups are very expensive. If you can cut the money and the funding to them and the supply chain that provides them with weapons, I would suggest that you would have a very much less of a problem.
Okay. Well, I just want to make it clear to the viewers that I'm not being paid also, and whoever wants to be a guest is welcome. And we do want to actually to have a kind of a coalition with members with your knowledge, and we are inviting, aren't we, Mariora?
I think we are, and here is where your outreach has really touched me personally, Dinna. Is obviously I disagree with a very large percentage of Israeli population, as well as Western population. I am in a very contentious position, and you tagged me on something where there was a discussion with somebody, and I had dismissed what he was saying in the beginning. And I was, to be blunt and honest, I was fairly rude and abrupt in my response. I did not expect him to respond to me, and if he did, I expected him to be, oh no, you can't say that. And instead, this amazing man, I think his name is Zach. Is that right? Yes.
Yes.
Instead, Zach responded, and he listened to what I was saying. And then I sent him a clip where I had been speaking to other Barak, and he had a guest, Yaakov Amar Rothstein, who is IDF, and he had been on the ground in Gaza. And he actually went and he watched it, which most people don't do. I will drop an article or an interview link, and nobody will go and watch it. And so they are arguing from a point of view, they don't actually know what I am saying. But he did go and watch. And then we found that we actually agree on everything. We are not in. So, this is the beauty of dialogue and the importance of listening to people who you might not want to listen to in the beginning.
Exactly.
I think there has to be a real move to connect up opposing views and say, where do we agree? Where do we agree? Because the solutions are not going to come from everybody fighting each other. This has
No,
created the
of
situation.
course not. No,
I
you're totally right. I definitely agree with you. I'm just checking his surname. Uh, I, I, I don't, 1 minute, please.
I'll also check
uh,
it.
let's check. I totally forgot his surname. You
And
surprised me, Mariora. I'm very good with names. Tzach Einav. Tzach Einav.
that's enough. Enough.
Yes,
Okay. An amazing man. An amazing man. He did not
very.
get bogged down in the rhetoric, in the crossfire. He assessed, he saw something else, and he moved it. And I was actually stunned. I did not think that type of thing could happen anymore because people have become so polarized. So it was really a humbling lesson for me because I've come to a point where I thought, oh, well, there's just nothing you can do with these people. If they think one thing, you cannot reach them. And I see I was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
I have found in him a real. Let me tell you, the background to this is
Tzach Einav.
are we, to Tzach Einav and the whole situation
Mm-hmm.
is, are we as humanity, globally humanity, going to serve truth or lies? It's very simple. Truth is very unpleasant and unpalatable because it doesn't feel good to a lot of people. I suggest that serving lies and trying to make lies true and walking down that road again and again and again is the road to hell.
Mm-hmm. I think that we should talk more. That's
I
what I
think we
think.
should.
I think we should talk more and gather some more friends and yeah, make a
I would
move.
love to see. I have got a number of people who I've been tracking, like Other Barak, and there's a man called Francisco Gil White, an academic researcher. And I would love to be able to bring all of these people together onto webinars, onto platforms where they can all speak and we can have a real dialogue and not just this group of people who believe this have their own place and then everybody else is on the other side and everybody else is on the other side. We need to kind of merge a little bit and listen to our, the other side and why they say the things they do,
Mm-hmm.
and defer to reality. This is very important for human. This is a human issue because we are going into a World War III scenario. If this
Mm-hmm.
continues to escalate, it is not just going to be Iran, Israel. We are looking at an escalation that will go into a global conflict. And that is something with the weapons we have today, we must avoid at all costs. And I honestly think the opinion is not that the decision will not come from the leaders. At the end of the day, either humanity will abdicate, they will say, oh, well, there's nothing we can do. This is how it goes.
That's
Or
what
they
they're
will
doing.
say, yeah, or that
Yeah.
infighting, or there's going to come an awakening where they go, this is not working out. We cannot continue. We have to stop everything and now fight for humanity and the planet. I I believe this so deeply.
Or in very simple words, we don't want to die from an atom bomb.
No. And to ruin, I mean, people talk about climate change and so on. Well, there's going to be nothing like a nuclear war, an exchange of nuclear weapons that will destroy the planet faster. Every green policy and every environmental concern, it's off the table if we get into that kind of a war.
Why am I
And
hearing when you're sorry, but when you're saying your words, I'm hearing in my head the words Russia and China.
Mhm. Correctly. And I won't get into it over here. It's very complicated. But for instance, one of the things I've followed very carefully is that Israel gave China control of the port of Haifa a couple of years ago. And Haifa might not sound like an important thing globally, except it is a critical port in the supply chain between Africa, Europe, and Asia. So Hezbollah are right now firing missiles and rockets at Haifa. If we close down that port, I just want you to think, you're from Romania, so you know where the Black Sea is. The Black Sea is north of Sevastopol. It is a no-go zone. You can go to any maritime tracking site and you can see there's. So we've closed a supply chain over there, or we have hampered it to a great extent. Then we look at the Red Sea and we see, because of the Houthis, we have almost shut that down. Egypt is losing billions from the Red Sea route being closed down. The port of Eilat is closed. And people will go, oh, that's great, we're getting at Israel. Well, no, you're not. You're shooting yourself in the foot, because it's not only Israel, it is Africa, Asia, Europe that is. Everybody is going to pay a collective price for the closure of the supply chain.
It reminds me about a company that approached me concerning an environment company here in the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm.
And after hearing your, what you're saying about the ocean, I wasn't so sure that it's a good idea. I wouldn't have taken the chance. Not at these days, anyway.
Meaning, sorry, I don't completely understand.
I mean that I'm not sure I would go into any big investment. Yeah.
Well, I think one thing I've noticed, and now I'm talking sort of again about the supply chain, is Europe is in very great danger. Europe has not secured an alternative supply of energy. And so with the Red Sea, very combustible, Europe is going into a winter where it's more or less dependent on shipments from the United States to make up for the deficit. So when Russian gas stopped flowing into Germany, if you look at the German economy, it deindustrialized overnight in 2 years. The German economy, and Germany was historically an industrial nation. So we are now headed to winter, and we have no real replacement for Russian oil and gas. So there is a very wide fallout, and people in Israel should remember that as well, that it's not only about Israel. This is a wider war for control that is being fought, and it is being fought on multiple levels. It is being fought on social media. It is being fought on the battleground in South Lebanon and Gaza. It is being fought between supply chains. And most importantly, we have this threat to the dollar that is BRICS. And Initially, the BRICS nations, which is Brazil, Russia, India, and South Africa, initially the Americans laughed off what they were doing. And we are going over time, but I think this is a very important factor. Firstly, Israel was one of the first countries to technically de-dollarize. If you go back to a report on, I think, the 20th of April, 2022, there, I think it was either Axios or Bloomberg is the one that I referenced, reported that Israel had, in a philosophy change, moved much of its reserve currency from dollars into Chinese yuan. Again, why was do you understand the financial implications? Because it's not that obvious. And is there anything I can explain? So what are BRICS countries doing? They are waging war against the United States dollar. And this is critical for people to remember. In the beginning, the United States dollar said, no, we are the king of the world. BRICS can't touch us. And then countries started to de-dollarize. What does de-dollarize mean? It means you stop paying for oil and gas in US dollars and you start to use your own currency. At last count, I think about 160 countries have de-dollarized. This is the threat to the United States dollar is beyond comprehension, and I don't think people are factoring that in. The United States is printing money, printing money. Okay, so we have trillions of dollars have been put into the system that didn't exist before, and they have no backing. It is not that they are bound to the price of oil or the price of gas. So we can see this is a very inflammatory situation on the domestic front in the United States. And also in the United Kingdom, what people don't realize is that the United Kingdom guaranteed Ukraine's war debt. And it's not going well in Ukraine. So we are looking at these countries, these top premium planetary control countries, have major threats to their economy coming from a fight back from the BRICS coalition against the US dollar, largely because the US dollar used sanctions as a weapon so many times that everybody else got together and said, right, enough of that. We are going to create our own parallel economy. But you should never leave that out of the equation. It's critical that people understand that there is a war being waged on the dollar. The dollar is not doing that well, and I would say that there are even fractures starting to show in BRICS. But when you have a clash for control like this, well, the last time a book I am writing is called Did World War II Cure the Great Depression in America? And from that you can follow that I am looking at if the economy goes badly, is a global war not going to be seen as an option by the leaders of these countries like France, UK, United States, who are facing an angry population, and they know that the money is running dry. And what is your get out of jail free card? Start a war. Just go to war and hope for the best. Or maybe they have better plans. I don't know. But you should not take the massive titanic struggle that the dollar is in to maintain itself as the dominant reserve currency of the world out of the equation, because I think it is front and central to all of this.
Mariora, your services are provided in English only, or can you provide services in other languages to your clients?
Look, I am English speaking. I don't speak Hebrew or Arabic or so many languages which I should speak, Russian, Chinese. These are all critical languages. But what is available at all times is translate, and so I am able to overcome that hurdle. When I post this the recording, I will enable uh, captions, subtitles, and those you can automatically translate if you just go to the settings in YouTube, at least.
Okay, and would you like to tell the viewers in which cases they can approach you as a professional? Uh, Maybe you're giving some services that I don't know about, and
What I do is I write about geopolitical risk and I look at supply chain and so on. So I will have people approaching me. Would you write an article about what's the situation with the price of oil? Have you got anything to say that perhaps ChatGPT hasn't thought of yet, or something like that? And then I go in and I apply. And we all use ChatGPT. Let us not. It's very useful if you use it in the right way. So I have that. That is my basic work. Is I'm a freelance geopolitical analyst, and I can write on things like de-dollarization and the supply chain and logistics. And then on the other side, I do have this sense of obligation as a human being, to humanity, in a situation where I see things are unraveling very quickly. And in that, I would say, please do join my Patreon, and doesn't necessarily have to be financial. Please do support my work, because I link onto a lot of other independent researchers who aren't heard about, who should be being heard. Their voices are excellent, their research is excellent. Instead, we have this horrendous control by the most mediocre and ill-informed, and willfully they want to cancel out truth. They want to silence any discussion about the hostages. The whole human level has been pushed out of the argument. And I thought by now there would be many more people saying what I am saying. I was expecting, to be eclipsed by people saying what I am saying. And I'm very shocked that I find myself in a minority, and it's quite a big minority, but they are not connecting up. So people can get beyond their prejudices and their fights and their infighting, and sort of look at it as, well, we have a task on our hands: preventing World War III, securing the safety of human beings, securing the safety of the planet. Then I would ask you, please do support me, because I have got all the other people down the line that I know are excellent analysts, that are excellent researchers. And I think if we had to put all of these voices together, we would gather a type of momentum that we simply cannot, as me by myself, you by yourself. So, there needs to be some sort of a coordinated, I don't like the word fight. I think a coordinated problem-solving group of people. People like Tzach, he is speaking truth. He is willing to hear things he doesn't like. We could put all of these people together, we may be able to avert a really disastrous situation from continuing to unravel.
Yes. Okay, so we did invite, and yes, I think I think it was a successful first interview with you online.
thank you very much for your invitation, Dinna. What you do is amazing. And just to the viewers, if there are any remaining, because it's been very long, uh, Dinna is looking around and she is gathering together people who are saying things that are important and introducing them to each other and cross pollinating ideas. This is crucial work because what is happening is everybody is in their own bubble. I'm in ceasefire bubble. I'm in no, destroy Hezbollah bubble. We are all in these separate worlds. And we have to come out from them and we have to start to connect with each other. And so what you're doing is actually absolutely critical. I want to thank you. I have been humbled. I have
Thank you
learned a great deal from you. And
very
yeah, I
much.
cannot overstate the importance of what you're doing.
Thank you,
It's like
darling.
you will
And
have my time at any time. And I know,
thank
by the way, Dinna takes a lot of heat standing in the middle of conflicting opinions, and she does it with incredible grace. Um,
thank you.
yeah,
Okay, that was
it's
a
true.
surprise. Thank you very much.
Thank
Okay.
you. Shall we close over there?
Yes, we can close.
Okay, unless there's anything else you wanted to ask.
Just that you're always I would always like to interview you. It's a fascinating subject, and I remained optimistic. I'm still imagining that there might be a one Middle East. I'm there.
I think we should always be optimistic. We have to, because if we don't, um, well, the whole of humanity is, it's just what one British general said. He said, war is a matter of fiction and chance. And I was so enraged by this comment. I was so enraged by it. I thought, you playing with people's lives. So we need to combat and take chance and fiction out of war
Yeah.
and, yeah, connect up humanity.
So we will thank our viewers that probably listened maybe even
Thank you
most.
very much.
Thank you,
Um,
Marie.
okay, thank you. And that's it from Dinna and myself.
Bye bye.